What you cooking there, boy? Potatoes, onions, ham, cream and cheese. As you can see, we're eating lightly today.
Hello, and yes, it was tasty. Earlier today I paid a visit to Kouvola, or I took a visit to Kouvola. I forgot to take the camera with me, so yay. But I sold one of my basses. It was a Ibanez RG300 series with the active EQ. Nothing wrong with the bass, but it sat in its case for something like 3 or 4 years untouched. So I decided that it's time for it to go. Because I'm not a collector. All the instruments I own are in active or at least semi-active use, or are in. So having a bass that's nice, that sounds good, that's versatile, but not being used it felt kind of a waste for me. And that's what I've always done. If there's a guitar, bass or whatever that's not being used, I'll get rid of it. There's someone who wants to play it. Not me at the time, but there's always someone who wants to play it. And instruments are meant to be played. They're not meant to be showcased. Usually. With quite a few exceptions, but still. And well, the main reason I wanted to sell it, or I wanted to get rid of it, is that I want to have a Telecaster. All my guitars, all my electric guitars right now are loaded with humbuckers, so dual coil mics. And if you record high gain distorted parts with those, yes, it sounds good, but it can get, and more often than not, it will get pretty cluttered what comes to mid-range, lower mid-range and mid-range, because the characteristic sound of a humbucker is it's thick, it's meaty, ballsy. But if you have too many of them, things are getting crowded. Frequency band is getting crowded. And the Telecaster is basically, to me, it's a Guitar World version of a Thunderbird, like Gibson Thunderbird, that has a reputation as a bass that cuts through in a mix, like a chainsaw. So Telecaster is a guitar equivalent, I think is the right word, for Thunderbirds. So if you have a lot of those high gain distorted guitar parts that are being recorded with humbuckers, if you double track those parts with a Tele, then you get best of the both worlds. You'll get that kind of full meaty tone, and you also get clarity with the Teles. And Telecaster is a kind of a fun guitar in a sense that it sounds bitey and aggressive, and without having that much distortion. Or you don't have to crank your amp in order to get that kind of a in-your-face sound that I like. And probably it's, well, I've been playing with Gibsons since I was 16. My first guitar ever was a Epiphone copy of Gibson Les Paul, and that's still actually my main guitar, still, after all these years. And once upon a time I had a Stratocaster, but I sold it something like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was more. Let's say 7, we're not lying all that much then. Because I didn't like it. For some reason, my ear wasn't pleased with the sound at the moment. But now I really want to get that kind of a Fendery sound. In the guitar world there are basically 2 camps. There's Gibson sound and there's Fender sound. And now I want to have something that sounds like a Fender to me. And that Tele I had was a Squier, or the Stratocaster I had. It was a Squier Strat, a good one. By the way, I liked the sound, but it wasn't the sound I wanted back then. So I sold it and bought I think it was Electro Harmonix bass Big Muff Pi, because I needed to have a bass fuzz back then. So now I just need to find a good telly, and being left-handed, it's not hard, but it's also not too easy, because let's say that if I was a right-handed player, I could go to our local music store or the nearest music store and just test things out. Let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. But being a left-handed, you're kind of limited, because you can't really test or demo guitars before buying them. Well, obviously you could if the guy in the music shop would order a guitar, then you would test it, so you could test it, and if you don't like it, then they would have to send it back. So there's really no reason for me. So I need to find a kind of good version of telly, a kind of a version that's, or a series of tellies that's affordable and that has a reputation of being solid guitar. So then I don't have to test it before buying it. I know how Fender necks feel, so that's not really the problem. But I can't test guitars in order to find that right individual guitar. I just have to go by grapevine, if that's the right word to put it. After uploading my latest video, I got once again that same question. Why aren't you vlogging in Finnish? Watching your English videos is cringy. Well, one question, why are you watching if it's cringy? And well, the reason is that for one reason or another, at this point in my life, I want to fight with things. I want to battle with things, not with people, but with things. And for example, as a songwriter, I'm trying to write things that are out from my comfort zone, both well, genre-wise or texture-wise, sonically, whatever. And what I've gathered while listening to my inner voice, which is way too bombastic way to put it, but still, is the desire and kind of a need to move forward, to evolve. And well, the following applies to multiple aspects of life or multiple sectors of life, but if you keep doing something, or if you keep doing something year after year after year, most likely you'll end up repeating yourself. And then you basically have three options. Well, now I'm talking artistically. It doesn't matter if it's music, photography, filmmaking, painting, whatever. But you start repeating yourself most likely. And you have three options. One, you keep repeating yourself, and by doing that, you'll end up making things feel stale. Or two, you embrace that thing you have built, and then you start building other things on top of it. So on the bottom there is that your own way of doing, your own kind of signature way of doing, but you keep adding flavors to it, so it doesn't feel stale. And then there is number three, that you recognize that you are repeating yourself, and then you start actively trying to find new ways, new paths, new whatever. But the whole idea is that, or the whole kind of point of the whole thing is that you have to recognize that you're repeating yourself, because after that you can try to figure out, okay, what should I do? Should I embrace it? Should I try to break out of it? What should I do? Well, in my case, I think I'm pretty close to number three, but well, number two is nice every once in a while. Okay, bad dad joke. And that's why I'm making vlogs in English. If I would make these videos in Finnish, I wouldn't have to think all that much. And that's the same reason why I've been playing a lot of keyboards lately. I mean, I started playing when I was a kid. I started my journey as a player with a piano. I've never get any good playing piano, but still it's something I can do somewhat efficiently, I think. Well, not efficiently, but let's say that I know what I'm doing sometimes. And if you compare that to my guitar playing, well, playing rhythm guitar is like a second nature to me at this point. I don't really have to think about it. I can just play. So, switching from guitar to piano temporarily, I have to force myself to do things. It's not natural. I have to constantly think what I'm doing. So it's challenging. It's not just something, so it's challenging. And it's not a bad thing that you're repeating. You just have to recognize that you're repeating, because then you can build on that, or you can solve things one way or another. But then there is, or the whole another animal appears when something gets commercially popular, because then the repetition, if that's the right word, becomes, it's like an ice pick to the ear. If you think about modern pop music, it's not meant to be listened, in my opinion. It's basically a sonic version of a wallpaper. It's not meant to be listened, I mean actively listened. It's meant to be entertaining, which is, well, that's fine, but I'm not that kind of a listener, I think. So if you think about all these things, tricks and production choices that are being made in modern popular music, there's Millennium Doo-wop, or whatever it was called, there were hand claps and certain kinds of, well, I wouldn't say drum and bass, but let's say dubstep elements that are, well, for me, they sound alienating, but that's because I'm an old guy. My daughter thinks that they're cool, but then again, I'm not the part of the target audience, let's put it this way. But when something becomes commercially successful, people start emulating it, they start copying it. And the worst example that comes to my mind right now is, or what comes to emulating, copying, copycatting, whatever is the right word, is Eddie Vedder. I mean, when Pearl Jam became popular, there were a lot of people who started emulating Eddie's way of singing. I mean, it's very recognizable, his tone, and that's his natural way of singing. That's a bad version. But then came all those guys who tried to emulate it, and that combined with the fact that post-grunge was basically shit musically, news of the day, it became, to my ears, very, very cringy, very, very fast. And I think well, if you are a Greed fan, don't listen, but he's probably the worst example of it, the guy who was a vocalist for Greed. He claimed that it's his natural singing voice. Well, listen to any Pearl Jam album from the first three. Pick one song, or pick two songs from their first three Pearl Jam albums. Listen to those, and then listen to Arms Wide Open by Greed. I don't think that that's his natural singing voice, but that's a Cromango way of singing, as we like to call it. You put your lower jaw right in front. Yeah. Sounds terrible. Although it was the thing back then. If you're thinking about it, there are always these trends and things that are circling, and that's not a bad thing. But if you don't have anything personal to offer, as a musician, as a songwriter, as a producer maybe, it ends up sounding stale. And one example is obviously death metal. When death metal first came around, it sounded great for those who like it. But it if I remember correctly, it didn't take all that long until people were fed up with it. And the reason for that is, imagine that you are in a death metal concert and there are, let's say, 2 kind of warm-up bands before the actual stars of the night hit the stage. Every band, down-tuned guitars, fast double bass drums, growling vocals. Every band, the same thing. It gets numbing, and that's the kind of exaggerated version of what I'm trying to say. But it gets very numbing to hear all the well, if you get hit by a truck once, that's a thing. But if you get hit by a truck 10 times, no worries, can't feel a thing. So there's a good and a bad side when it comes to repeating and repetition. But if you recognize that you are repeating, then you can react to it. I should be streaming today, but my sleeping schedule's all whacked up and I still have some audio editing to do, or MIDI editing to do. So I'll be streaming tomorrow. Most likely DayZ. I haven't played it for a while. I've been playing Destiny in the past couple streams. So I think it would be DayZ tomorrow. And today, this mess that I've created. Mental note for myself: it's not wrong to delete something. I have way too many elements to work with and I don't really want to get rid of any of those, although there are things that shouldn't be there if you look at the bigger picture, but still. Well, let's end this here, so until next time, see ya!